Good shape. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our secretary is not here. Mr. Vice President, would you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Outlay.
Here.
Mr. Hassinger.
Here.
Mr. Quinton.
Here.
Herb. Herb 1 and Herb 2.
Here.
Randy.
Here.
Mark Morgan's here. Clay and Gene are absent.
I know Gene's supposed to be coming, but we'll go ahead and start without it. All right, we have a motion to adopt the agenda. Have a
Second.
motion, do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? Any objection? Any, what's the other word I'm looking for, Quinn?
Abstention.
Abstentions? No. Okay, motion carried. Motion to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on August 20th, 2020. To have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
To have a second. Second by Mr. Noel. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries. Employee recognition and appreciation. I'm not sure I have anything on that, Derek.
Yeah, Herb, we recommended deferring this month with the storms. It's just been quite hectic, and we'll catch them at the next month when we do all the catch-ups.
Okay. Okay, opening comments by President and Commissioner. Again, my opening comments would simply be to thank the staff for everything they did in relation to Charlie Brown's little sister coming in this weekend. That's Sally, for those of you that don't follow the comic strip. And, you know, great job as usual, we've grown to expect from them. This meeting was originally scheduled to be held in St. Bernard Parish. However, just for the record, because we were unsure of what Sally was going to do at the time and what condition the parishes would be in, we moved the meeting to here. We're going to see about holding our annual meeting in St. Bernard in either the October or November meeting. We'll have to set that up with the parish to check the availability of that. Any other comments by any of the commissioners? Okay, do I have any public comments? I don't have any cards. We do? Come on up. Welcome back to our chambers. I do have a card. I'm sorry. It's sitting on the other side. You want to talk about Lakebourn issues? Okay, Roy?
Yes,
Mr.
just a couple of
Aragon,
quick little points. First of all, I would want to thank the administrative people here. I know with all of these storms we've been having, they working hard, especially those folks that go out and open those gates. I know they open them and closing a lot of gates, and we appreciate all the hard work that y'all do. Two quick observations. I wanted to point out that the tax that was voted down in St. Bernard for more drainage last month, that it was offset. It would have been offset with another tax of equal value that was ending. So had they passed that tax in St. Bernard, what they were paying would not have changed overall. So they actually lowered their taxes. They actually lowered what they're paying now as a result of that. And anyway, I wanted to kind of point that out. I don't know if everybody knew that. Another thing in the discussions with Lakebourn over these who should pay for what, they've always said that they protect Orleans and Jefferson. St. Bernard protects Orleans and Jefferson from storms. And the old timers here know, year after year, storm after storm, I point out it didn't happen. Once again, with Laura, which at one point Laura was going to be coming up to the west side of Orleans and Jefferson. No protection from St. Bernard. And then with Sally, St. Bernard took much greater risk and even took some of the hit, and really with a minimal amount of threat and risk, the way that it actually went. to Orleans and East Jefferson. So just like putting that on a record, because they always claim that they protect us, and the reality is they don't. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to point out in response to that the levies in St. Bernard are contingent with those in the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans. So there is a commonality at that point. As far as their comments about protecting Jefferson and the rest of Orleans, that point can certainly be argued. It would have to be a very severe flood in St. Bernard. Of course, they do get the brunt of the storm initially. As it moves up the lake, the surge levels decrease. But nonetheless, it is what it is. We're sorry that they did not pass the millage. It is up to the St. Bernard government whether or not they go back for that. We'll talk more about that, I guess, when we get into the agenda itself. Any other public comments? I don't have any other cards. Anybody else wish to make a public comment this time? I don't have any presentations. Any commissioners have any presentation? Committee reports, finance report, Commissioner Dastia.
We had 3 items before the committee. One was a discussion of certification of the ad valorem millage rates for Lakebourn, Basin, Levy District. It was passed, it urged the board to pass it by a vote of 3 to 1. We had a discussion of proposed revisions to the Levy District budget. That was passed unanimously on to the board. And discussion for procedures, electronic vendor payments. We set up a procedure for that. That was unanimously accepted. And for review final budget, we got a review of the final budget numbers as to how things are with the new software, and it all looks good. So that's the report of our committee.
Okay, any questions or comments on the committee report? Okay, Operations Committee report, Mr. Morgan.
Yes, the Operations Committee met this morning, and we had a couple projects which we'll discuss here in a few minutes, and 4 capital outlays for each of the districts, and the flood authority to pass a resolution to send to the legislature so we can maybe get some extra money for special projects.
Thank you.
That's, we'll go over each of the items as we get to them on the agenda.
Any questions or comments regarding the Operations Committee report? Report by Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Bays.
Good morning. All right, it's working. Good deal. So I have a relatively short report today. It has been a hectic month, 2 to 3 weeks for sure. We've dealt with 3 storms, Marco and Laura together, and then Sally. I think Chris and I were talking earlier this week, and the timing was somewhat eerie in that Marco and Laura, we began our preparations and planning on that Saturday. Sally, same thing this last Saturday. We went through the exercise. I think Chris basically just changed the calendar dates on his initial plan because Saturday, Sunday, Monday pretty much lined up just like before. Marco and Laura, we closed 69 gates, all the major structures, and operated the London PCCP. Sally closed 94 gates. That included every single evacuation route. In fact, we closed every hurricane gate. No river gates, but we did close every hurricane gate except 2 out on the lakefront that had sill elevations of 15 or higher. But everything else was closed and buttoned up, and closed all 3 PCCP station gates. Went very well. We did incorporate there's always things you can do better. That's just a reality of what we do and things we learn and tweak every time. We were successful at incorporating some things from Marco and Laura into our operations for Sally over this last week or so. I wanted to touch on a few things because I know I send updates to the board. I try to do it every day during a storm, and I send out a whole lot of PowerPoint slides that you're getting from National Weather Service, but also some of the AdCirc runs that we get from CPRA. Want to stress that these are not official, they're not official National Hurricane Center predictions, but they are incredibly beneficial. For those who are not aware, CPRA hires LSU and UNC Chapel Hill. Our old board member, Rick, is involved with that effort because of the supercomputer powers that they have, and they are running AdCirc runs throughout the storm to help make predictions. So essentially, when a National Weather Service prediction comes out, somewhere in the range of 3 to 4 hours later, we get an AdCirc run that's projecting what the water levels are going to be in the surge at different locations throughout the system. I chose the surge. This is from Sally. That just this week. So September 12th, that would be, I believe it was Saturday. So that was the first run. So pick the surge barrier. What you see here is the green line. All the little bubbles, those are actual tide gauge readings that you see on the screen up there. Then the yellow there is the prediction, and the green line is the trigger for closure of the surge barrier. So we were looking at that point on Saturday of a surge of around the 8-foot mark out on the surge barrier.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Has anybody estimated what the surge was at the mouth of the river? Is there a way to estimate that?
We do. They do have estimates. We could pull the actual readings for
I
you.
know what the
from
maximum
pages.
surge was.
At Carrollton, it was about 9 feet.
9 feet, okay.
Yeah, and it was probably about the same at the mouth. Those were fairly similar throughout the tracks. But yeah, the Carrollton got up to about 9. And the river was at 4 or 5 going into it.
That's
So
from Sally?
That's from Sally. So we saw a 4 to foot 5 surge up the river to Carrollton. This is the next day. This is Sunday. So what you see on here is, and I've got to use my glasses or step back for a minute, but basically the yellow is the earlier prediction and the green is the new prediction. So the prediction dropped a little bit from, it actually bumped up. There are multiple advisories in between this. Just, you're not seeing like the one we're getting every 4 hours. This is just a snapshot in time on Sunday. It actually jumped up to over 12 overnight at the surge barrier, but then as it came back down, it went back down to about 10. So we were looking at the green line for about 10 at this point. This goes to Monday. Again, we were this time the blue track. We were still sitting about 8. The dark blue track about 8. So what you see on here is the previous track from about 4 hours earlier, the current track, and then CPRA runs veer left and veer right scenarios. If the storm basically decides to go 50% one way, 50% another, or 100% one way, or 100% another, to try to gauge what the worst case. For Sally, as this evolved, we were more focused on the veer left scenarios based on how the storm track was starting to look. And if it's going to fall.
Oh, yeah, actually went backward.
And this is the 15th, so this was Tuesday. Now we're seeing, as the storm continued to, and the predictions started to shift more and more towards Mobile and the Gulf Coast over there, started to drop down. We were looking at roughly a 6-foot surge at the surge barrier. How high did we get? About 5? I think it was about 5. Yeah. So, and we ended up seeing about a 5.5-foot surge at the surge barrier when it was all said and done. So that is a very beneficial tool. It has some quirks that we've learned over time. The Carnarvon model, because of some issues with the model and the location, is not quite as on target as some of the others, but we know that, so we have to work through that. But everywhere else, it's a beneficial tool at Carnarvon as well, but we have to do some more analysis. We also look at windy.com. This is also a very beneficial tool. Anybody can pull this up and play with it, but you can actually see the storm prediction. You can see the storm track and the swirling as it goes through and watch a storm. In fact, if you go pull it right now and you run it into the future, you can start to see what the potential for Invest 90, which is the one that's kicking down by the Gulf of Mexico, by the Yucatan and southern Mexico right now that we are watching. So just make everybody aware, like staff is going through this exercise during a storm, looking at the weather service predictions, looking at what CPRA sends us, looking at windy, looking at, different models. And this is how we're making assessments on how high we have to close and when we have to close. So, cheery news, tropical outlook. Sally is obviously past us. If you look at the predictions, Vicky is fizzling out. Teddy is supposed to hook and go up the Atlantic at the moment, more so. We are watching the one in the bottom left corner, currently Invest 90. There is a 90% probability that it's going to develop into a tropical depression or a storm in the next 2 days. If you look at the spaghetti models right now, it shows that it's bouncing around the Gulf and maybe into Texas or northern Mexico. However, it's early. It's very early. And so this will be our focus to monitor over the next week or so. But we have a very active storm season, and there's actually only one regular alphabet name left. I believe it's Wilfred. And then we go to the Greek letters. That's how busy it's been this year.
Greek letter.
Greek letters. They flip to, once we're done with Wilfred, if there's more named storms after that, they go into Alpha and Beta and so on. Trivia fact. But anyway, it has been obviously a very busy 3 weeks or so for the staff. And we are right back in the mode to prepare for the next round. Ordering food, checking supplies, rechecking supplies. I do want to report that I let the board members know during Marco and Laura, we did have some leakage at the Carnarvon Gate, and there was some emergency procurement actions that Herb approved after that. We were not able to get that emergency work done because of Sally. They were scheduled to start Tuesday. We still need to do that. However, Jerry and Darren and his team worked with divers and actually got divers out on site on Sunday, and we're able to put visqueen down at the gap at the bottom. There is a 20-foot gap on one side that's a 1/4 inch, which is minimal. But they were able to seal that with visqueen sandbags, and they winched it down extra tight. We did not have any leakage issues at Carnarvon, and that gate had water against it for probably the longest of any of our gates. It got up to about 4.5. So no leakage. It was a good temporary fix, but we will still continue with getting that sill clean. And we know we're talking to the Corps about making some adjustments. We'll probably have to adjust that gate to get that gap down as well. But it did work, and the system did function as designed during actually all 3 of these events.
In 2008 at CPRA, we discussed permanently closing the bypass so the silt problem would go away, because it's not very efficient as a bypass. So it's possible we could ask CPRA just to close it so we don't have the silt problem anymore. But
it's a dead end canal, and it's just, you don't get the flushing that you do in those other locations. So we're still talking to the Corps and CPRA about if there's any other previous legal agreements or cooperative agreements that were made with any of the local businesses or the parishes. We do not believe there are at this time about responsibility for dredging the canal. It's not our responsibility to dredge the canal. We have to maintain, a couple hundred feet from side to side of the gate, and that's what we will deal with. But honestly, Delacroix or whoever uses that canal should dredge it, but I don't think there's any agreement to force them right now.
Any other questions or comments? Again, I just want to thank you and the rest of the staff for the great job y'all do, not only protecting the public, but keeping the commissioners informed of all the issues that may be going on and taking care of stuff. So y'all do a great job. Just keep it up. It's what we expect and what we know we're going to get.
Thank you.
Great job.
And I just want to say, we have a really good team. Obviously, we've had a lot of practice this year as well, but we get better each time. But without not just the directors, but their leaders and supervisors that work for them, and then the crews that are out there busting their butt, opening, closing, and going through that exercise. It's a lot of work, especially in masks and taking all the protocols and precautions. So those folks are the ones that deserve the credit and the recognition.
Derek, do you have an electronic version that you can send us of that?
Yeah, we can I can get it to Glenda, and we can push that out.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Derek. New business. Let me get this little animal out here. So, adopt, levy, and impose millage rates and assessments for tax year 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Lakebourn Basin Levy District. We have to have a motion and a second, and then we've got to read this in its entirety. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Kosei. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Morgan. All right, we have a motion and a second to read the entire resolution. On a motion of Mr. Kosei, seconded by Mr. Morgan, the following resolution was offered. LBBLD Tax Resolution 2020. A resolution levying and imposing millage rates and assessments for the tax year 2020 on all the property subject to taxation in the Lakebourn Basin Levy District. Whereas it is necessary for the Board of Commissioners of the Southeast Louisiana Flood Protection Authority East, acting as the governing authority of the Lakebourn Basin Levy District, Louisiana, hereinafter called the District, to levy taxes and assessments for the year 2020, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the Southeast Louisiana Flood Protection Authority East, acting as the governing authority of said district, that Section 1, operation and maintenance taxes, under the authority of the Constitution and laws of the state of Louisiana, the following millages for special taxes are hereby levied, assessed, and imposed on all property in the Lakebourn Basin Levy District, Louisiana, the district, for the year 2020 for the respective purposes described below. 2020 millage rate 3.99, type of tax ad valorem, no election date, no years authorized, purpose constitutional tax, Louisiana Constitution, Article 6, Section 39. 2020 millage rate 4.45, election date October 17th, 2009, type of tax ad valorem, years authorized 2011 through 2020, purpose constructing and maintaining necessary levees, levee drainage, flood protection, hurricane protection, and all other purposes incidental thereto. 2020 millage rate 3.13, election date October 22nd, 2011, type of tax ad valorem, years authorized 2015 through 2044, purpose constructing and maintaining necessary levees, levee drainage, flood protection, hurricane flood protection, and all other purposes incidental thereto, which tax may be used as security for bonds or other evidence of indebtedness to be used to pay costs of such projects. Section 2, local or forced contribution. Under the authority of Part 2 of Subpart B of Part 6, Chapter 4, Title 38 of the Louisiana Revised Statutes of 1950 as amended, and specifically pursuant to LSA-RS 38:421F, and other constitutional and statutory authority supplemental thereto, a local or forced contribution of $60 and no cents per mile of railroad lines within the district is hereby levied and assessed for the year 2020 for the purpose of constructing and maintaining levees, levee drainage, and for all other purposes incidental thereto. Section 3, collection of taxes. The proper administrative officials of the parish of St. Bernard, state of Louisiana, are hereby empowered, authorized, and directed to spread said taxes and assessment as set forth above upon the assessment roll of said parish for the year 2020, and to make the collection of the taxes and assessment imposed for and on behalf of the district according to law, and the taxes and assessment herein levied shall become a permanent lien and privilege on all property subject to taxation as herein set forth, and the collection thereof shall be enforceable in the manner provided by law. Specifically, the assessor of the parish of St. Bernard shall extend said taxes and assessments on said assessment roll as required by law, and the sheriff and ex officio tax collector of the parish of St. Bernard shall collect said taxes and assessment in the same manner as state taxes are collected, and shall settle therefore with the state treasurer as provided by section 404 of Title 38 of the Louisiana Revised Statutes of 1950 as amended, provided, however, the proceeds of any tax levied specifically for payment of general obligation bonds shall be remitted to the district pursuant to the authority of section 551.9 of Title 39 of the Louisiana Revised Statutes of 1950 as amended, and other constitutional and statutory authority. Certified copies of this resolution shall be forwarded to the St. Bernard assessor and to the St. Bernard sheriff and ex officio tax collector as complete authority to levy and collect the taxes and assessment herein provided. Section 4, publication. This resolution shall be published one time in the official journal of the district in the manner provided by law. Section 5, effective date. This resolution shall become effective immediately. And the foregoing resolution was read in full. The roll was called on the adoption thereof, and the vote thereon was as follows, and that will be determined shortly. Okay, so at this point, we need to open it up for public comments. Do we have any public comments? We see no public comments. Okay, the resolution is now open for discussion amongst the commissioners. Have any discussion? No discussion. Okay, we need to have a roll call vote. Mr. Secretary, Mr. Kosei, would you please call the roll?
Okay, Mr. Dasdu? No. Mr. Hassinger?
Yes.
Mr. Johannan?
Yay.
Mr. Lattiolais?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Abstain for the moment.
Mr. Morgan?
I'll vote present for the moment.
Yes.
Mr. Noel? Yes. Mr. Weesham?
Yes.
The Secretary cast his vote as yea.
Okay. President normally doesn't vote, but if I needed to, I would have. Okay, so the motion carries. Okay, moving on. Have a motion to approve the revised Lakebourn Levy District budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. Mr. Morgan?
I'll make a
Give
motion.
you the floor. Motion for Mr. Morgan, second? Second. Second by, what's your name? Mr. Hassinger. You'll soon forget, right? Okay, I have a motion and a second. This came before the Finance Committee. Mr. Dastiu. Comments?
I haven't got any comment.
This is just our year-end budget, and we decided to add in the FEMA $3.6 million reserve we had, so we could increase and make the fund balance more respectable in case we may need that in the later next year.
That's what I meant to say.
Okay, so just a couple of comments about that. The $3.6 million is from a fund that is not collected in any particular parish. It is general funds that have been given to us by
FEMA.
FEMA.
It's from BP.
For that, was that?
It was because of the BP oil spill.
Yeah, okay. And this is the money that we had agreed to provide to St. Bernard Parish upon the transfer of the of the drainage pump stations and interior drainage to the parish. As you all know, this is currently in litigation. Our resolution that we passed for the litigation says that any expenses that we incur above and beyond what we would, above and beyond anything after the transfer should have occurred, will be deducted from our final settlement offer. So nothing new here other than we're now physically moving that $3.6 million formally into the budget.
But we don't have an agreement from St. Bernard.
Sorry?
We do not have an agreement with St. Bernard, obviously, yet. We had one, but it's been withdrawn by them. I guess to summarize the budget overall, we had about $1 million increase in taxes collected because of some property exemptions that expired, and we were still $700,000 deficit. So,
Yeah, we had projected a deficit of 2 point something million, but we ended up with a net deficit of about 700,000. We had additional revenue from FEMA that we collected, and then we had some expenses related to projects.
Again, I asked some questions earlier via email that you responded to that I think clarified a lot of this. So the motion before us is the one that we should have in our package. It shows the $3.6 million transfer.
yes.
Any further questions, comments, discussion? Mr. Noel?
We had a deficit in Lakebourn of $700,000,
Yes.
not a $2.1 million surplus because they collected more in taxes and we spent less money.
No, we had less of a deficit than we had originally budgeted, but we still had a deficit. So yes, we collected more money, but what that meant was the deficit wasn't as large as we had originally budgeted.
You're gonna have to explain these numbers to me again then.
Okay, so
'Cause
we
it looks like
originally,
here it says excess revenue or expenses 2.8 million. And that change of fund balance is 2.1 million.
well, there's some additional project costs down there, but I can go over it with you.
Yeah, you gotta show me how we lost 700,000. I don't see it here.
Okay, we'll go over it.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, let's vote on it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
We have, motion carries. Item A3.
So you just prevented, we came with a policy. Is that what we're
Yeah,
on?
this is the motion to approve the procedures for electronic ACH transfers to pay vendors. I'll make a motion, we adopt the new policy.
Straight procedure.
But if this was
Yeah,
a
if you
motion to
remember at the
approve-
last board meeting, we are starting to pay more and more people by ACH procedure, and we didn't have an official board-approved policy. So I had the staff prepare in writing the policy, and she reviewed it before the finance committee, and it sounds like it's conservative, and we have a lot of steps and controls in place to make sure the ACH is going to the right vendor for the right amount of money as approved by operations, et cetera. So,
I think every staff person has to stamp it.
yep. At least
Also,
two.
been given this procedures for electronic vendor payments, fairly extensive checks and balances involved there so that the person who prepares the authorization is not the person that finally approves it. And of course, we also have the check on any funds over $5,000 requiring 2 authorized signatures. So there's very significant checks and balances involved in this. And for those of you that, I think most of you are familiar with electronic vendor payments, it speeds things up quite a bit. So we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Quentin.
Over there. Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Motion carries.
The review of the final budget. Do you want Kelly to give us a review? We had a review of the final budget under our committee. Do you want to have her give it to the full board? A review of the final budget for all levy districts was given to our committee. Do you want to have her give the same report to the board?
It's not on the agenda, but she updated and closed out the year, which fiscal year ends June 30th, and she prepared the final budgets for each district and the authority. And overall, we were a surplus of, I can't
You
remember.
did such a
11
good
million.
job of showing off the software. I thought you want to show it off to everybody.
Yeah, so what Quentin's referring to is we have a new software that we've purchased recently, and we've been doing extensive training on it. I think I need to go back to school and get a computer degree, but what the software does is once we design the reports, it allows us to then give those reports to the end users, and they can refresh the data, and it goes into the accounting software and pulls the latest data. So they can run budget to actuals anytime they want, and it saved me significant time in just formatting. You format it once, and then you just refresh it, change the date, and it's super easy to do. So that's the reports that I prepared this time. We're using that new software, and we'll be rolling it out to the end users very soon and giving them some training on how to use it. But overall, we were under budget by about 17 million for the agency as a whole. 7 of that relates to a transfer that was budgeted for a transfer to the Corps of Engineers that we actually made before year end, right before year end. So it didn't hit this year, it hit last year. And then we had some under budget due to timing of some of the projects, seawall erosion, some of the potato berms work in East Jefferson, things like that. So that overall, we were about 17 million under budget.
Any further questions or comments? Okay. Moving on, item B1, motion to request the state of Louisiana capital outlay program to fund certain Southeast Louisiana Flood Protection Authority projects for the fiscal year 2021 and 2022. And so these are 2 items. One is a terrorism prevention and emergency response command center, security cameras and perimeter fencing for 2.2 million. And the second one is a surge barrier, public safety educational visitor center complex for 1,250,000. Do I have a motion?
And
A
second,
motion, to have a second.
I second it.
Have
Joe.
a second. Motion and a second. Open the floor for discussion. Any discussion?
Well, there's 4 motions for capital outlay. Every year we submit to the state legislature certain budgets that we wouldn't, certain projects that we wouldn't normally budget for, in hopes that they might send us some money our way as a matching type program where they might give us $1 million and we had to put up 100,000 or something like that. But without this motion, they were not going to give us any money. So we need to present this, and we have a list of projects here, and we can run through each one for the districts and the authority and kind of.
But I just have a quick question. So
Yeah, we had the explanation of this provided by Chris to the commissioners on all
if we have
of
a
these various projects, so
$17
we
million.
open up floor for the question. Mr. Outlay?
If we have a $17 million, if we were under budget by $17 million, could we not allocate some of that money to do some of this stuff? Or no?
Well, we were primarily 17 million under budget because like the erosion control project, which is 9 million, didn't get done when we budgeted. So we had to rebudget it this year.
Yeah, and this is a good segue. We talked several months ago about, we did a study of our long-term costs because we have some years where we have big projects and we run a deficit for that year, but then other years we have a surplus. And we are in the process of fine tuning that and kind of putting some ranges around it. And then once we do that, we'll segregate those funds and have those reserves set up for those particular years so that when we have a year like this year where we have a surplus, we take that money and we put it up and we and save it for the next time we have to do a huge project like a levee lift or foreshore protection or something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
And then also we have Orleans and East Jeff, but Orleans specifically had an agreement that they still owed a portion of the cost share related to pre-Katrina work. And we've settled that number and it's going to be, I think, around 10 for Orleans, Derek, was it 10? 8? We think around 10. So that's another kind of big chunk that we know is going to be coming up pretty soon.
I got you. Okay.
Can I ask a question? On the surge barrier education complex, $1,250,000, is that everything? The whole project?
1 second.
No.
One second.
I don't remember we've been talking about that for a few years, and it depends on the scope and what we can combine visitor center versus, or with a maintenance area, with,
Well,
storage versus
why are we asking for money unless we have a concept agreed on?
We had preliminary concepts done that sort of tracked what you saw at some of the barriers in Amsterdam, where they tried to incorporate educational facilities into each barrier, which would help engender public awareness and trust in what they were doing, that sort of thing. I don't remember the numbers offhand, though.
I don't have the whole application with me, but I believe that is for both design and construction.
Any other questions or comments? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Hearing none, so moved. Item B2, motion to request the state of Louisiana capital outlay program to fund certain East Jefferson Levy District projects for fiscal year 2021, 2022. This one involves a Jefferson Parish lakefront erosion protection repairs and the amount of $10,500,000. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Morgan, second. Second by Mr. Hassinger. Open for discussion.
I mean, are any of these, do we feel like could be a priority that we would start to budget for that way? Because, I mean, we keep asking for the same money over and over again. If any of them are like something that's priority, maybe we start budgeting for it now, and then we can do it in a year or two, 3.
Yes, we can prioritize this, and if we were prioritizing them, that would be my top priority. Yes. And we are still trying to work with the Corps and hopeful that the Corps will get this in their general reauthorization report. It's actually in the report, but that ultimately it will become funded by them, but that's years away.
I mean, if we could somehow allocate some money, towards this one, if this one is what we feel is priority, and then if the Corps does happen to put it in their budget, well, then you got the surplus of money you can go do something else with.
Absolutely. That's what we're doing. We're pretty much at that point where we have to start repairing it. We're currently doing the pilot study that we've talked about before to see if there's some other options, because it is a very expensive fix.
Yep.
Same question, does the 10.5 cover the entire project, or?
It covers the entire project that's listed in there, but that's only about 1.9 miles in Reach 1 in East Jefferson. The whole project is 5.4 miles. So this is only a portion of it.
First up.
Let's start budgeting now.
A large problem.
Any further questions or comments? Let's vote on it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item B3, motion to request the state of Louisiana capital outlay program to fund certain Lakebourn Basin Levy District projects for the fiscal year 2021, 2022. This is for the design and construction of a safe house facility to house the Lakebourn Basin Levy District staff during the storm or emergency event. The request is $4 million. Motion by Mr. Kosei. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Morgan. Open for discussion. Anybody have any questions?
Well,
I've got the same question.
Same
Clinton's
question.
been asking on these is what does that 4 million cover? Is that the whole project? And
That is the whole
That one is the
project.
whole project, yes.
yeah, currently we house them at the St. Bernard Parish Governmental Office, and it would obviously be better if they're in our facility where we can respond quickly and more appropriately.
How big of a facility?
It's to house 20 people during an event. That's more than our staff in case there are some other parish officials, others often there, Corps, CPRA, others may be there.
but it's one of these self-sustaining designs that
Typical of most of the parish.
can make it through hell.
Yes,
And then for the-
155 mile an hour wind.
Gotcha. Right, yeah.
Elevated.
Elevated, yes.
Any further questions? Comments? Let's call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Hearing none, so moved. Item B4, motion to request the state of Louisiana capital outlay program to fund certain Orleans Levy District projects for fiscal year 2021, 2022. This is the Bayou St. John water management improvements for $875,000 and the Highway 90 land bridge for $5 million. Motion by Mr. Hassinger. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Morgan. Open for discussion.
What is the Highway 90 land bridge?
That's a natural land bridge between Orleans Parish and St. Tammany from Orleans to Lake Catherine.
And why is that
What
under
do you
our
do?
jurisdiction?
What are you using $55 million for?
The land bridge project is a shoreline protection project to make it more resilient because it does deflect a little surge entering the lake. So if it benefits every parish that borders the lake if it knocks down surge.
Trying to protect St. Tammany.
St. Tammany ought to put some money up.
Well,
Do you have any further questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, so moved. Item B5, motion to authorize the issuance of amendment number 1 to task order 300701 with Linfield Hunter and Junius, Inc. to include engineering services during construction and construction inspection services at a total not to exceed amount of $82,520.15 for the Orleans Marina seepage repair Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects, thereby increasing the total not to exceed amount of said task order to $170,304.89. Do I have a motion? Mr. Hassinger, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Morgan. Open for discussion.
I got a question. Why was this not included in the original bid?
this was the original work that they were doing was an assessment as well as design of the repairs. Once we've determined what the problems were that were causing all the sinkholes, erosion, and ponding out there that they were doing. So we didn't know what the solution was at the time, for one thing.
So they were hired to assess it?
They were. And it's typical that we don't award these services until after the job is awarded to a contractor.
And it's also, we typically do not award that. It gives us the option if we want to hire a different firm to do bid phase and construction inspection.
But we're hiring the same firm.
Throughout, normally you want the engineer that did the design to do the bid phase and construction. You avoid problems with interpretation of plans by any other engineer. There are situations where you
When
do
they did the
change that,
assessment, what did they
really
find?
the exception rather than the rule.
The problem was there's a broken 24-inch drain line that's about 13 feet below grade. It's very deep at this location. This is it's kind of a unique project because that pipe is so deep, and we have to fill it and replace it. And we recommend that we go with Linfield because they're the most aware and familiar with this.
Yeah, last month we awarded the construction phase to Quartz Construction Services. And so this is just hiring the engineering company to oversee and make sure they do the job according to the specs.
Just out of curiosity, with they're overseeing, what's the value of the project they're overseeing for this?
The value is about $200,000, which is small, but we had removed the asphalt out of it because we're going to, which is a big
Which
chunk.
reduced it
It reduced
considerably.
the amount, but it didn't reduce their cost because it reduced the amount of the construction.
But it's kind of an intensive oversight, isn't it? Because it's
It is
problematic.
It is
Yeah.
problematic, and so it's unique in that aspect.
Sure, understood.
Any further questions or further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. Item B6, and we will need an amendment to this later. because the contract is lump sum, not a not to exceed as stated in the resolution, but a motion to authorize the issuance of a task order to HNTB with a total not to exceed amount of $122,534.84 to provide schematic design and construction documents, and bidding assistance for the replacement of 10 tripping dolphins at the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway Surge Barrier East Closure Gate. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a
Motion
motion.
by Mr. Morgan. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Joanna. Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to request an amendment. Somebody will make a motion for an amendment to we change the not to exceed amount to a lump sum amount. Motion by
I'll make a
Mr.
motion to do that.
Morgan, seconded by Mr. Hassinger. Any discussion on the amendment to the motion? We'll be voting on the amendment.
I got a question
Not
on the
on the
amendment that
motion.
also
Yes.
relates to, was this bid? Was this a bid job?
Not yet. They're preparing the plans.
It's preparing the,
for bid.
okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Any questions or comments on the amendment? The letter from the engineer actually called for a lump sum, not a not to exceed. The resolution is incorrectly worded. Any other questions or comments? This is a vote to adopt the amendment, not adopt the motion. All in favor of the amendment to the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we're opening discussion for the resolution itself. Mr. Noel.
How many of them is it?
There's a total of 10. There'll be 5 on each side of the structure.
And this, we mentioned it earlier, why wouldn't the Army Corps be doing this since it's an aid to navigation?
They are telling us that this was a feature for the project when constructing the sector gate, the barrier wall, that this is all incorporated as far as the maritime in order to use the passage through the wall. So this gets lumped in with that project. So they're saying that we are responsible for the OMR and R.
But it was a temporary structure.
Initially, it was a temporary structure because the maritime needed that structure even during construction. So the Corps hired labor, went out and constructed this. At the end of the job, they were going to remove it, and the maritime industry objected, said, no, we really need to continue this. So instead of building more robust, they said, well, it's been working for the 3 years during construction, we'll just leave it here. And I've got some pictures of it now, and I think in your package, as to the years have gone on, they've just, they've got beat up pretty bad, and going to make these a lot more robust, that's for sure.
Their scope carries through the entire project and not just this preliminary design.
The design will be complete, that carries it through the bid phase, so they will help us
Okay,
with
the bid phase, and then-
obtaining fit. They'll have to come back with either this firm or how we're going to do this in the future.
Any further questions or comments?
They have an estimate on what it might cost, or they can wait for you to...
The engineer's estimate was 2.3 million on the construction. I've reached out on the prototype just to kind of see if they were in the ballpark. Bow Brothers gave us a preliminary bid, a cost, and the Corps, who actually constructed the prototype at the West Complex.
They had an as-built cost? that
As
they
built
gave
in
you?
place. Yeah, it was about 500,000 a piece. So we need to get that lower. They don't have to be that robust. So I'll be working closely with the engineer to get some parameters. And we've set that
Mr.
as two
Noel,
conditions.
the breakdown, if you look at their scope, they have a breakdown table.
Yeah. You said the Corps spent $500,000 on each one?
At the
That
west
was in the
closure.
western closure complex, yes.
They spent that. They didn't have a contract to bid on it. The Corps
Yes.
spent that?
Yeah,
No, it was a contractor.
bid.
a
For the
big one,
temporary.
And they had a sub, so it was a markup on a markup and all that kind of stuff, so yeah, we're gonna do it direct. But, there's a lot of variables, water depth, velocity of the water as to.
Yeah, and
how
those
easy
are
it is to-
protecting the structure, the West Complex. So those are taking a much harder.
But here, I'm sure it's for steering purposes, to get them lined up to go through the surge barrier
Correct.
instead of crossways directly through,
Correct.
so that they.
It's a critical spot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who come up with the number 10? Where that,
was there, and we haven't had any objection from the Maritime up to this time, other than they're not there anymore, they can't tie up to anything, so.
I just wonder if 2 works better than 10.
Yes.
Works for us.
I don't suppose there's any chance the maritime industry is going to benefit from this, kick in a little money to do it.
I doubt that.
What's the cool, what's the kick
Parties
in?
that use it, and right now, it's difficult for us to find out actually who damaged it, and we've done pretty good on some of the fender damage over the years. We've got a camera that we're able to see which tug actually damaged that, but the fenders the dolphins are located at least a half a mile away.
Maybe when it gets hit, a camera starts going off.
I'm thinking we charge a toll.
I like that.
How much per barge?
Okay, any further questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Hearing none, so moved. Next meeting will be held October 15th, 2020, here at the Franklin Avenue Complex. We will be checking with St. Bernard Parish about holding the meeting there in November. And if we are unable to hold it in November, we'll see about moving this meeting from October here to the St. Bernard concept. Motion to adjourn. We're adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Just a reminder to all commissioners, if you're interested in going on the tour with the Corps and the Chief of Engineers, you could leave, I would